What is up, YouTube? This is your host, Ranee B, here to spill that homicidal tea. In today's case, I came across by accident. I was watching the ID channel and this came up and I had no idea. It told the tale of a young girl with her long life ahead of her, as always, just minding her own business. And someone just saw fit to never let her see her true potential. There's no reason that this case should have ever happened. So just let's skip with the intro and join me in honoring her and learning more about her story and who she was. This is the solved homicide case of 14-year-old April Millsap. April Millsap was a 14-year-old girl who was growing up in a small town outside of Detroit, Michigan called Armada. She was an only child and she lived with her mother, Jennifer, and her stepdad, David. They all got along great. It was just a great childhood. On July 24th, 2014, it was a day that was no different than any other. Just nothing weird or stressful. Just a perfect evening for April to take her best friend, a border collie named Penny, for a walk. April loved to take Penny out on the bike trail that was near her house. And it was around 6 p.m. And there were other people, or tons of people out there on that bike trail, because that summer evening, thick with the remaining warmth from the day, but with just enough evening cooling sensation to make it the perfect temperature to enjoy a walk outside. A little later on, a couple who had been walking the trail as well came across a dog that was by itself. Anyone who's ever spent time with a border collie knows that they are extremely smart and they have instincts that make them perfect for herding dogs because they like to stay in their pack, and when something gets out of sorts in their pack, they get really antsy. Penny was walking around by herself doing figure eights and pacing and circling, and when the couple that came upon her gave her a little bit of attention, she bolted and turned around like, you need to come with me. And that's when the couple made the horrific discovery of, down a ravine, of the young body of a little girl, and they immediately called 911. Well, unfortunately, when authorities came out, they found that it was too late to do anything to save her. She had been what they determined was most likely the victim of an indecent assault, given the state of her undress. The investigators, they found the young girl with her shorts and underwear pulled down to her ankles and her top pulled up to her neck. They had little to go on, and while the young girl was being transported to the medical examiner's office, detectives, they searched the trail in the surrounding area for clues to the girl's identity. And this is where they came across a woman by the name of Jennifer, accompanied by a young man who was looking for her daughter after she'd taken longer than usual to come back from walking the family dog. Detectives asked Jennifer to describe the child and the dog, and I can't even imagine how hard it is, to had been the detective that had to tell this woman that her only child, her baby girl, was dead. Investigators asked Jennifer if April had her phone with her because, there's a lot of data they could get from it, and Jennifer said that she actually had in fact left with her cell phone, and she left around 6 p.m. After about an hour later, that's when Jennifer started to get nervous and started reaching out to April's friends to see if April had swung by their house or if they'd heard from her. No one had seen or heard from her at all. So Jennifer then tried April's boyfriend, a boy by the name of Austin. Austin was concerned and told Jennifer to meet him out the trail due to the fact that he'd received a strange text message from April earlier that evening. That's when the young man with Jennifer spoke up and told detectives that at 6:28 p.m., April had texted him the following message: "I almost got kidnapped, OMFG." The investigators were now driven to locate April's phone. Not only was the message perplexing, but the location data within that phone was of utmost importance to this investigation. And even though Austin was forthcoming and seemingly helpful, detectives knew not to get thrown off track. He could be a suspect. They had to maintain a professional demeanor, but at the same time, approach with caution, because he could also just be, somebody who just learned his little girlfriend died. But they thought it was strange that he was only now bringing this text message up, and not earlier to April's mother. When they asked him why he didn't come forward sooner, like when it actually happened, he told investigators that he was with a friend getting food and they were picking up food from a restaurant. So police, we're going to prove it. They went to that restaurant. And lo and behold, there was Austin plain as day on the security footage. So, and they took him aside and they said, listen, we get you were there, but take a polygraph, which he did. And he showed zero signs of deception. So he was no longer considered a suspect for now. Well, at the autopsy, they had found that April actually had not been indecently assaulted. Her cause of death was manual strangulation, but actually with a shoe. It looks as if someone had stepped on her face and her neck with such force that it killed her and basically choked the life out of her. Whoever did this, they needed to be caught. So, while at the crime scene, you might think that they were reaching a dead end for the detectives. However, when they sent out tracker dogs to locate April's cell phone in the area, the pups and their awesome noses quickly grabbed onto April's scent and located her cell phone about a mile away from the scene. It was located off the trail in a residential area at the end of one house with a particularly long driveway and a ton of trees and lots of overgrowth. During the same time, April's phone records had actually come back from the carrier, and they contained some crucial information. April had downloaded a fitness app that tracked her steps, the speed she traveled, and the distance of the location of her movements. They found that on the day of her death, she had left her house at around 6 p.m. at a speed of approximately 4 miles an hour. A quick walk, but not too terribly fast. The pace became erratic and varied greatly, and this was around 6:20 p.m. So detectives determined that this is probably when the attack started, and that April tried valiantly to fight off her attacker, and she must have thought that she succeeded, but he ultimately overcame her, and after a period, there was no movement. But then the phone started moving again. The GPS signal showed it was moving down the trail. It showed it was moving at an area in the residential area, and they knew this wasn't April. This was the killer. That combined with all these other location data things, they combed this area for clues. They knew that they could find more, and they found April's backpack discarded in a field. They were getting closer. Surrounding agencies, they pitched in to assist in searching this whole new area of this trail and the surrounding areas for anyone who may have seen someone with a backpack at the time of April's murder. Using the location data points from April's phone, police also combed the area for video cameras, and the only thing they found was a man with a motorcycle leaving the area and nothing else. Investigators hit the trails again to try to find anyone who came across anything. Well, they found some witnesses that described a man that looked out of place and visibly upset and frustrated, who was on a blue and white motorcycle. They remember this because the trail explicitly states that there are to be no motorized vehicles on the trail at all. So seeing one was weird. That combined with another witness who had seen a man in the bushes by a parked motorcycle on the trail. And he looked like a deer caught in headlights when this witness saw this man. That's what stuck out about him. And the guy had a photograph in his brain. Another witness came forward and said that he'd actually seen April and the unknown attacker having an altercation, but thought it was nothing. Minded their own business. They did remember what the man looked like. So all the witnesses, they came together to work with a forensic sketch artist to create a police drawing of something that could possibly be released to the public in an attempt to locate this monster. A state trooper by the name of Raymond Peckman was driving home from work, and not too long after this case hit the media, and he noticed a blue and white motorcycle similar to the one that he had seen on the bolo that was issued with information pertaining to April's case. Officer Peckman approached the motorcycle, took a couple of pictures of it, and sent it to the task force that was handling April's case. They said, jump on it, find out who owns that house, find out who owns that motorcycle, we need to know what's going on with it. Well, they, by getting that green light, he went to interview the homeowners and ask him whose motorcycle is this? The man who lived at the residence stated that he actually didn't own the motorcycle. It was owned by his brother, and he lived about an hour away, So, but if you want to talk to him, his name's James Van Callis. Okay. After doing a quick background search on James Van Callis, they found nothing. No. Nothing of any red flags. So still, this didn't mean anything. It also didn't mean that he didn't loan the motorcycle to someone else. Or, whenever you have a distinct color car or whatnot, or even a distinct color jacket, and you see somebody else with that jacket, you're like, maybe he had seen another motorcycle in the area that looked like his. He could actually, pinpoint and help them locate like the direction of travel or something. So at that time, Peckman went out, totally innocent interview, to the 32-year-old James Van Callis. And in doing so, he found James was actually quite polite, very forthcoming with questions whenever he was answered, all those questions from the trooper. I mean, he just was a good dude so far. He had stated that on the night that April had been murdered, I hate saying that because it's just, it's so final. And I mean, I know that why we're all here, but I don't know, I just wish that I didn't have to keep saying death and murder all the time, even though that is the subject of the channel. Get back to the case. He had stated that on the day of April's murder, he was in Armada that early evening, about 5:30 to 6, and that, he stayed for a few hours and, he hung out with his brother and left around 8 p.m. and headed home. When the state trooper asked James if he had the shoes that he had worn that day, and if so, could he see the bottoms of them to compare with possible shoe imprints that they found at the scene, without hesitation, James showed him the alleged shoes that he was wearing. They didn't look anything like the tread patterns that they found that night. While nothing stood out, the trooper still had a gut feeling. Something wasn't right. Something didn't add up. It was a hunch, and the police hunches, you don't ignore those. So, as is common in investigations of this nature, the trooper went out the next day just to reiterate all the facts that, old James had told him, and he wanted to get it on paper this time. And he said, can you make a statement? Because people rarely change their stories day to day if it's the truth. So he said, here, help me solidify the timeline. Go ahead and write this out. James declined. He said, oh, I don't have time. I gotta go run errands. It's kind of important. Now, this is when the trooper started really getting some inner doubts. And what's just a little hunch turned into nagging. It was a festering doubt monster in his mind. Like, what's going on with this dude? Why would you not make a statement that you would have to back up over and over unless you were afraid of being able to maintain that story and you're hiding something, boo? In addition to the abrupt about face of James's demeanor. Helpful open book one day, reclusive standoff dude the next. I mean, going through his notes, trooper's stomach fell to the floor. He looked at the composite sketch. It looked a lot like James. After the state trooper urged the task force to dig deeper into James's story, they found that the timing of the recollection of events didn't match up with what his brother said, he came over to my house and, he didn't arrive till later that night. That was enough probable cause for them to get a warrant for James Van Callis' cell phone. When they looked through the location data and saw his phone hit a service station right next to the crime scene, not his brother's house, that's when they went out to recreate possible trail distance and location data. And the detectives, they found that James could have easily been on the trail at the same time that April was there. So learning this, they sent out a search team to look through James's house to look for anything that could link him back to April. They came up empty-handed. Well, no, not empty-handed. They found some pot plants. Old boy was taken in on unrelated drug charges. Okay. It wasn't long after James was booked that the detectives received a phone call from a woman by the name of Crystal Stadler. She was claiming she was James's girlfriend, and she was being held against her will. She wanted to talk to detectives about some things that she had noticed in the odd way that James had been acting. Crystal told investigators that the main reason she wanted to talk to them was that she had seen how distraught April's family was on television. And if James had something to do with this, she wanted to help that family get some sort of closure and justice. What made her begin questioning James's involvement was the fact that the morning after April's attack, she saw James furiously cleaning his shoes, complaining that he'd spilled oil on them. And when she asked him why he was freaking out about it, he was like crazy emotional. And he said, I done something bad. I done something very, very bad. Crystal, please promise me that you're going to be there for me no matter what. She took that little incident in the back of her mind. And when the trooper came out and asked James about shoes, she saw him intentionally grab a different pair to show the officer. She knew that he had worn a different pair of shoes that night before, and she knew then that he was somehow involved with April's murder. There wasn't the black and white pair of Air Jordans that he was wearing and diligently trying to clean that morning. Crystal showed them, the officers, a picture of James that he had on his Facebook where he was wearing the exact shoes that he had been trying to clean, and how they were nowhere near the shoes that he had shown them and claimed to have been wearing. The investigators once again searched James's house for the shoes, couldn't locate them anywhere. They took a shot in the dark, and they ordered the exact same pair that Crystal swore in her statement. And when they came back, and they shipped the shoes and they came in, that moment, none of these people involved will ever forget. Now, remember when I said at autopsy, they found that someone had stepped on her neck. The details weren't released at the time as to how they knew that, but now, when they saw this Air Jordan tread pattern with the signature Jordan silhouette, you know, the one where he's flying through the air, about to do a slam dunk, an outline of a dude with a basketball stretched over his head. That was almost the exact bruising pattern that the medical examiner had found on little April's face and neck. It's disgusting. The DA had enough. Handed down their recommendation that the investigators had enough evidence to bring this piece of shit in and charge him with murder of sweet little innocent April Millsap. And that's just what they did. Well, obviously, he said, I'm not getting to it. So off to trial they went. On January 20th, 2016, the trial for James Van Callis began, and it was nowhere near the polite young man detectives encountered in their first meeting. He was such a smug prick, laughing, sneering during the trial. I mean, staring at April's family and his ex-girlfriend with alternating hatred and aloofness. I mean, the prosecution, they came out guns blazing, though, painting James Van Callis as a cold-blooded killer, which he was, and with no remorse or regret for his actions. Character depiction was going to have to make a big impact on this jury because, I mean, as the prosecution, they had little physical evidence to link James to the crime scene. It was crucial that they showed that with all the circumstantial evidence combined, that it would be reckless to assume anything but the fact that James did this to this little girl. They did have an incredible witness lineup, and they had technical data from April's watch and even the surveillance of James leaving the area at the exact time the killer would have had to left. The prosecution, they even brought forward the last text message that April sent, the one where she mistakenly thought that she had outran or outwitted the man who tried to eventually the man who eventually tried to steal. Oh wait, I know, he did steal her precious life. The defense answered the prosecution's theory with the fact that none of the evidence proved anything. He never was at the scene, and you can't prove otherwise. The end. I swear, why wasn't I a defense attorney? I mean, people get paid good money for bullshit stories like this. I mean, come on. But then I'd have to represent these people, and I would eventually have to be charged with murder. Luckily, the jury, they did the right thing. And in February of 2016, after deliberating for an agonizing 6 hours, which is a lifetime, I mean, to try to stay hopeful and expect a guilty verdict after that long, they did just that. And they found James Van Callis guilty of the first-degree murder, kidnapping, and assault with intent to, indecently overpower and do things to them. It's the word we don't say on this channel for respect out of anyone who's gone through that. But you know what I mean. Attempted indecent assault. That jury kept doing the right thing by sentencing this piece of shit to life without parole, which of course he appealed. But luckily, when Van Callis tried to overturn his conviction by citing that there was no physical evidence that tied him to the crime scene and that witnesses used by the prosecution were not credible, the appeals court, they scoffed at his attempt at getting a new trial by answering his complaint with a statement that read, "Boo thang." Okay, it didn't start that way, but I just love talking smack to these asshats. But back to the court documents, addressing the defendant. Miss James Van can fucking jump off a bridge. Again, my words. Although there's no physical evidence tying the defendant to the crime, there was plenty of circumstantial evidence from which a jury can conclude that defendant was the perpetrator. Based on reasonable inferences, there was a sufficient amount of evidence that the defendant was the killer. See you, babe. Have fun in the showers, Miss America. Again, my words at the end. Thank God I never got into court reporting. Could you imagine if I could have altered this transcripts. It would have been funny. Anyway, but back to Sweet Pea April. It often happens in these cases. Something beautiful came out of this story. The people in the area, they came together and created a special space that was just for April. And they called it the April Millsap Community Garden. It's located right at the beginning of her favorite bike trail. And the garden doesn't just have flowers and gorgeous greenery. It also has April's story memorialized and pictures of the sweet teen placed in various locations in the garden. And this is where I go crazy. It's also got a statue of Penny. Ah! I love that. The loyal border collie that led strangers to her best friend's resting place so they could get detectives on the case as fast as possible. I wouldn't be surprised, and I totally believe this, that if April in spirit was right there with Penny, waiting for someone to walk by and jumpstart these events to take place and for the police to start looking for who did this to her. April and Penny. Oh, I love those two. Well, that is it for this case. Have you ever heard this one before? I came across it randomly on a crime show, and I don't even remember which one. But I still get shocked when I hear these stories I don't know. So here's another one for you guys. I mean, I hope you, especially hope that you like the new writing style. I'm trying to be less robotic and to be less, I want to be factual, but I want to also have storytelling, because sometimes I notice that as I'm reading the scripts, I'm like, and then the court said, no, and it's not like this. I want to make it like we're having coffee together and I'm all excited about a case I've never heard of. And so I hope that's coming through, and let me know if it's working, and let me know if it's not, I guess. I don't know. We'll see you soon in the next video. And until then, remember how great pups are. I love dogs so much. Oh my gosh. In cases like this, make me want to just go give mine a big hug, which she'll hate, but I will. See you later.